He's brought a child onto my ship. And on my bridge.
I'm sure Mr. Data has a very good explanation.
I do, sir. She was frightened and did not wish to be left.
Mr. Data, kindly assume your station.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Fully Functional, a TNG podcast. I'm Maggie, joined by Jeff and Dory.
Yo.
Jeff and I are Star Trek nerds, and Dory is a Star Trek novice, and we're taking her on our first journey through Star Trek The Next Generation. Today we're talking about the Season 2 episode, Pen Pals. Original air date, April 29th, 1989. And we'll take it away, as always, to Dory for the recap.
I'm just listening to you intro the episode, and I'm like, what the fuck was this episode about? I already forgot. I finished watching it 15 minutes ago, and I already forgot. Okay. I'm going to just take a peek at my notes. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. So the Enterprise, it's the first manned vessel to enter the Selkundi Dreama sector. There's like probes that were sent in previously that were like, hey, there's some sketchy geological activity and maybe something to investigate. So Riker thinks that these planets live fast and die hard.
That's the name of the newest Die Hard sequel, right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I think the next one should be called Just Die Harder, and then the next one should be called Just Die. I say that like I'm invested in this series. I'm not. I've only seen the first one. Anyways, okay, so we see Picard. He is dressed in a cardigan, a turtleneck, and a like newsboy hat, and he's going to the holodeck because he is all about the horses today. And this is his request in the holodeck. He wants woodland setting with a bridle path and an appropriate mount, a horse, Earth horse, Arabian, English tack, and Picard will control the animal. So him and Troy go out to the horse. They're in the holodeck, and I wrote in my notes somewhere like it's weird that they're outside.
Yeah,
I think I'm just like not used to seeing like sunlight on them for real.
They did actually shoot on location.
Yeah, I made a note that it's like it's very jarring to see the Star Trek cast like outside.
Yeah.
And like in a place that looks like the real world, you know?
Yeah, it was really weird. Yeah, so Picard is literally about to get on that horse, and then Riker's like, hey, can you like come here please? And Picard's like, fuck. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So then they have like a group meeting because apparently Riker is in charge of Wesley's education, which is like since when and what? And who put him in charge of Wesley's education?
They established that.
Has this been discussed before?
Yeah. They established that at the end of, I believe it's the first episode of the second season when Wesley decides that he wants to stay on the Enterprise.
Okay, that might make a lot of sense because I've blocked out that episode so much.
Remember when Worf like volunteers to tuck him in at night?
Oh, like vaguely. That sounds familiar, but like the context is absolutely lost for me. Okay, well, Riker's in charge of his education, and he's like, I want to make Wes put him in charge of the planetary mineral surveys, and they get into a really interesting conversation that honestly kind of lost me because Wesley can be multiple things at the same time. Like, I don't understand where this argument sort of was, because Dr. P's like, is this a young officer on the fast track to the academy or a young man being guided through adolescence into adulthood? And it's like both.
Yeah.
You can't separate one from the other because it's the same. It's one person. You're talking about Wesley. And plus you should be treating what does it matter? It doesn't matter. I don't know. This whole discussion was so dumb. Mm-hmm. I did not care for
The entire crew is Wesley's dad. That's what the conversation is.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think what they might have been going for was like, hey, he's still a kid. Should we be pushing him this hard yet? Sort of thing.
Yeah, I get that. And like, it's a big responsibility should he, like, it's a lot to take on. But the way that Dr. P sets it up, like, it's a useless point because he's still, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, if Riker's in charge of his education, it shouldn't be like, oh, okay, well, I think of him in this way, so like, should only be. No, if he's put in charge of Wesley's education, then he should think of him as like a whole person, whether or not he as a person can handle this shit. Like, it's, I don't know. I don't want to. We'll come back to, I guess, this later or at some point. Anyways, okay, continuing on. So they bring Wes in, and he accepts. He seems pretty fucking psyched. Meanwhile, Data is like doing his own little project where he's like, I don't know, I'm honestly kind of lost for some of this, but basically the gist from what I got is like he's trying to see if he can like detect natural and artificial signals. What? I don't know. But he gets like a voice that's like, is anybody there? And Data's like, I am. Oh, and then there's like a really weird scene with like Troy Riker and Wesley in the hallway. Touch on that later. Oh yeah, so Wesley's basically like, hey Riker, what if like it feels weird because like I have to then be in charge of people who are older than me, and how do I deal with like, you know, interpersonal issues? And Riker's like, that doesn't matter. They're gonna be like professionals. But if they do have this problem, you're in charge, so settle it yourself. I'm like, cool,
Yeah,
that was
I think his
not
question
helpful.
was how to settle it. Like,
yeah,
what
and
the
Riker's
fuck,
like,
Riker?
figure it out. Like, it's not.
You'll be fine.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. If there's a conflict, settle it. Fucking how.
Yeah.
Well, that solves everything.
So okay, so then, like, we find that. Okay. This is confusing, and I don't know if you guys like know the right answer to this, but so we like flash forward in time. Data has now heard this little girl. Her name is Sarjenga, and she's on Drama 4. Wes has been like working with his team, which is like Ensign Davies, who's kind of, I was confused with his character because at first I thought he was like a dick because he's like, you know, if you're overwhelmed, let me know and I'll take over your entire fucking command. And I'm like, what? And then later he's like, yep. Oh, Wes tells him what to do, and he's like, yep, I'll do it. I'm like, what? I don't know. This is a very confusing character episode for me. Oh yeah. Okay. So we're flashed forward. Picard in the voiceover says 6 weeks. And then Data says 8 weeks when he goes to talk to Picard while Picard is riding the horse. What is the time difference?
Oh, yeah.
Because, yeah,
I
they give two different numbers.
Yeah. I totally missed the voiceover somehow. I didn't even realize it'd been 6 weeks. But when Data was talking, I'm like, they've been here for 8 weeks? It does not seem like that long at all.
Yeah. I don't understand the timeline.
Yeah.
Also, like, it seems like I mean, this might be because, like, I don't understand geological work, but it seems like a lot of time to figure out very little information.
It's a lot of, like, long scientific scans is what I think it is, but in all fairness, during the development of the episode, they were kind of struggling with how to figure out the timeline, and they dropped a lot of the character building storytelling in favor of more tech stuff. And the director really did not like that, and I can see why.
I buy that in actuality, it would take 2 months to do all this shit. It's just the way the episode was written, it doesn't feel like they've been at this that long.
No, not at all.
I agree. It's funny that, Jeff, that you say that, like, they're trying to figure out the timeline, but they couldn't figure out the timeline because they give two different amounts of time.
Yep.
Okay, so they basically figure out that, like, there's, like, a whole scene with, like, Riker and Wesley, because Wesley's like, I want to do this thing, but, like, Davies was like, no, it's a waste of time. Turns out 'twas not a waste of time, but Riker does drop the question that I am honestly surprised that it's canon on the show, but it's great. He asks Wes, what would Picard do? And I'm like, huh. For some reason, stuff like that always seems to like exist outside of the show. I don't mean Star Trek in particular, but I just mean like there's so many like TV characters or movie whatever where they'll like, what would this person do? But it always just seems like so a part of the actual piece, and so this being like in there was kind of jarring for me. But I'm happy about it. It's like a good thing.
Yeah.
So basically, like, Data has been in communication with this little girl for like all this time, and he is like, if we can figure out what is causing all this like geological shit to happen, then we can save Sarjenka and her family and like all the people on the planet. So then it sort of becomes into, oh yeah, he hasn't told anybody except for Picard at this point.
Yeah.
So like it becomes a whole discussion of like the prime directive of should they really be like, you know, stepping in, and or should they just let everybody fucking die?
Yeah.
Okay, on one hand I did enjoy like the big group debate, but on the other hand, we didn't really get anywhere with that.
Yeah.
The only way that something was actually like decided that something would be done is when Picard's like, Data, sever the connection, and so he goes to like sever, like to turn off the frequency, and you hear I wrote something along the lines of like, then a chipmunk starts talking. Yeah, so you hear Sarjenka's voice just being like, Data, are you there? Are you mad at me? Data, and so everybody like, are you there? And that sort of like is the clincher of like, well, we've now heard this small child calling for Data. Yep. We can't leave this kid to like die now that we've heard her voice. Mm-hmm. So,
as the rules of television say, so it shall be done.
Yeah, although technically though, Picard technically it's not, he didn't do it for Sarjenka, he did it for Data. So, okay. Basically, they decide, okay, they figure out what's causing the issue on the planet. They send down probes to like stop this like dilithium, so because it's like fucking up the tectonic plates, so there's like a volcano. Data goes
fucking
down
up
to the
Titanic
planet because
plates.
Whatever. Hey, it all ends in disaster. So Data can't get in touch with Sarjenka, so he goes down to her planet and to the room, and he meets her, and he's like, we best go because that is erupting. The volcano, that is. So then he comes back up to the ship, brings her onto the bridge, and Picard double takes and is pissed.
Mm-hmm.
He brought a child onto my ship, onto my bridge.
Yeah.
I'm not good with children, Will.
This is something that actually bothered me a lot. So then Picard says to like that Troy should take Sarjenka to sickbay. And Troy goes over to Sarjenka, who's obviously pretty fucking scared. Mm-hmm. And Troy, like, keeps going at trying to grab her or, like, trying to bring her to sickbay. And she's, like, freaking out. And of all people, and I blame the writers for this. Of all people, Troy, how would she not be able to, like, sense this child's fear outside of the child obviously being visibly scared? And yet she keeps persisting to, like, try to take this child somewhere else.
To be perfectly fair, Troy's powers are only as useful or unuseful as the script calls for.
I mean, yeah, but this child is visibly scared. Like, you don't even need to be, like, to sense her feelings. But I just, out of everybody, to me, Troy has always been, for obvious reasons, and just her character has been the most empathetic. And she's watching a scared child and does not let up. Yeah. And I think that's really out of character. That's really fucking poor writing. That, like, she just, like, the child is screaming no, and she just keeps going. And that, to me, made zero sense. And eventually, like, Data brings her down to the sickbay, and Picard decides, and I hate this. He's like, let's wipe her memories without her consent, her anything. This child, let's just take away her memories of Data to cover our ass. And I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
So then Pulaski, she takes the memories out, and Data brings her back down and to her home because the planet's been saved. And so Data's like, well, she won't remember me, but I'll remember her. And I'm like, I want to forget this episode. Just like, there was a lot of, to me, out of character moves in this episode.
Yeah.
And Picard admits that he didn't help her because, like, oh, her home was in danger. He was like, well, Data was affected. Data was invested, and so I got to help Data. And I'm like, that also just feels so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Recap ended.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
Yeah, this episode's usually a skip for me, and I don't think I've changed my mind.
Neither have I.
Yeah, I did kind of like the Wesley stuff.
Oh, yeah, the Wesley stuff was fine.
Yeah. I remembered this episode a lot differently. I thought that there was going to be a lot more of back and forth between Data and the little girl. Like, they didn't show any of their relationship developing.
No, not at all. And the kid's personality is just child.
Yeah. It's like, why should we care about this child?
Because it's a kid, and you have to care about kids.
And a huge gripe I have with this episode is kind of... I don't know if this is with the episode specifically or just the concept of the Prime Directive in general. So I'm assuming that the original intent of the Prime Directive was to be kind of a critique on American interference and a critique on colonialism. Being like, we don't do this anymore. We're not colonizers. We're not going to come to other cultures and try to impose our own values onto them and that kind of thing.
It's funny, I literally wrote down, the irony is not lost on me of, like, that this is an American TV show being like, hey, maybe, like, let's not get involved in all the other people's stuff when, like, currently, well, like, the history of the U.S. is basically sticking their nose in every single country's business, being like, we're the world police.
Yeah.
So, like, that's real rich.
Yeah. But, like, I'm assuming that, like, the whole concept of the Prime Directive was to be, like, a counter to that. Like, purposely saying, like, the way we're doing things now is bad, and we should do it this way. However, it became this weird philosophical, moral, like, quagmire of, like, should we let people die?
Yeah.
Like, okay, like, the examples Picard gives, and he's like, so we should make an exception when millions of lives are at risk. And Dr. Pulaski, which is, like, the only time I've ever agreed with her was in this scene.
Right.
She's like, yes, we should. And he's like, is it the same thing for, like, an epidemic? And she's like, yes. And he's like, what about a war? And he's like, we're not so sure now, are we? Those are different things. A natural disaster, a pandemic, that kind of shit. That's like, that's not something, that's not political, you know? That's not an internal politics sort of thing. A war, that's a political thing. That's a thing that's very entrenched in that society, in those societies and cultures and blah, blah, blah. So I think that you can make a distinct difference of, like, hey, we're not going to get involved in your war, but we'll help you out in a natural disaster. I think it's more complicated because, so another factor of the Prime Directive is, like, so it's kind of twofold, is number one, not getting involved in the internal politics of another culture or whatever. And the other part is not interfering with pre-warp civilizations. Like civilizations that don't know there's alien life or haven't developed warp technology yet. So I kind of get how they're like, I kind of get how they're like, well, we don't want to, like, reveal that there's fucking space aliens to these people that haven't discovered it yet on their own, that maybe aren't ready for this. But You could still do it in secret, you know?
Yeah, I mean, did anybody on that planet, like, were they having their eyes peeled waiting for these torpedoes to, like, fix the dilithium shit? No.
Yeah.
They could have done, literally, because the thing is, like, this doesn't harm anybody. This literally, all it does is save these people. And yeah, you could do it freaking anonymously. You just, like, Data only went down because it was, like, a personal thing.
Yeah, and I hate, because a lot of them talk about, like, oh, but if there is a cosmic plan and stuff like that, I'm like...
Oh, yeah.
Metaphysics. It was the 80s.
Yeah, I hate the idea that the Prime Directive has anything to do with, like, what is essentially, like, being like, well, we don't want to interfere in God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea of fate.
You know, that's basically what it boils down to. And it's like, no, you should just... you shouldn't make decisions based on whether you think that this is part of, like, the whole big, quote-unquote, plan of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, whose plan was it to, like, genocide an entire fucking planet?
Yeah.
Like, that seems like a really weird part of a plan.
Yeah.
So, I call bullshit.
Mm-hmm. I just think, even if an entire civilization is going to fucking die, if an entire planet is going to explode or whatever, I think maybe revealing that there's life on other planets is not the biggest deal.
So here's the thing, and this is why I understand and don't always agree with how dogmatic the fucking Prime Directive is.
Yes, that's exactly the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, because it is absolutely just dogmatic. Now, the problem is that applying it blanketly, as Picard said, to just, oh, well, we have to divorce our emotions from the decision. Okay, yes, fine, I get that. But you have a moral philosophy. And a moral philosophy is, unfortunately, built on how you feel about things. And there isn't any way around that. You can't just logically say, well, killing people is wrong, because wrong is a moral judgment. So... The problem that you run into with the Prime Directive is that, yes, they have all of these examples of, like, when are good times to use it and when it is much more complicated. And a situation like this where they defend it by saying, well, yes, but what are the consequences afterwards? What you're saying is you don't want to own those consequences. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you don't want to take responsibility for that.
Yes. And in all fairness, if it is like a parallel to colonialism, then yes, because a lot of problems with colonialism went with people who were generally well-meaning for the time period. Not all of the problems, obviously.
Yeah, they wanted to quote-unquote help.
Yeah. And they, in the end, did the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. And that was because of their limited understanding of things. And it is absolutely... this goes with what Riker said. Is it not the height of hubris, as he described it, to decide, who lives and dies over this? And, like, that is a good point. To assume that our moral judgment, given the context of our current understanding of the universe, is absolutely right, that's a problem. However, the whole argument that Star Trek is making is that we have reached a point in our social evolution that kind of moral judgment is the height of hubris. It is actually the correct thing. That's what Star Trek is about, that we've reached that point. Mm-hmm. So having a rule that overrules that is kind of counter to the idea of what Star Trek is saying about humanity's future.
Yeah. And I just think it's reductive to have a rule that's so rigid.
Yes, I completely agree.
Even in our own laws, it's like you still... kind of have a trial and you debate it and, like, see if it's the right decision and that kind of stuff. Like, that's what I'd, like, there would be problems with this too, but I could see more if the Prime Directive was, like, a thing where you had to have, like, maybe, like, a tribunal or something, and you had to, like, apply to see, like, hey, does this, is this an instance where we should apply the Prime Directive, or is this an instance where we should get involved? Right. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like the example you gave, Jeff, of, killing is wrong. But even with that, we as a society have decided that, like, if you're doing it in self-defense or in defense of another, then it's fine to kill. Even.
That was literally my same point.
Oh.
You said it for me.
Sorry.
No. You said it for me.
Yeah. So, like, I think there's lots of nuance and debatable stuff with every rule and law and thing, and like that, talking about it and debating it and applying it situationally, I think is, I think that's more the route you should go.
Yeah.
Rather than just being so rigid. Like,
I mean, like, context is everything.
Yeah. And, like, being like, hey, we're gonna help these natives because they're too stupid is different than, like, hey, we're gonna help out these people suffering a natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand that, like, yes, even if you think you're doing a good thing, you can totally be doing the wrong thing. And I agree with letting cultures, like in Star Trek's case, letting cultures develop on their own without interference. But that doesn't mean letting them all die because they're quote-unquote fated to.
There is a much better episode about this coming up, I think, in the next season.
Yeah,
so,
I think I know which one you're talking about. I like that one.
Yeah, and that covers the entire problem a lot better than this one does, because this one really isn't giving the viewer any room for nuance. It's saying, maybe just letting them die is fine, because dogma.
Yeah. The thing is that I love is, like, this whole philosophy is, like, we should let cultures, like, develop on their own without interference. And it's like, so you're just gonna let that culture die then?
Yep.
You're just gonna let it cease to exist. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not like a war where, like, they're doing it to themselves and that's just, they destroyed themselves or whatever. Like, fuck you, you made your own problem. That's not our problem to deal with. But, like, your planet's about to explode and we have the technology to make it not explode. So maybe do that,
Yep.
Sorry, I went off on a little thing there.
No, it's okay. I think we had just reached the natural conclusion of that point, because, we're clearly all on the same page about it.
Yeah.
Going back to talking about the actual episode's, execution, though, I think this episode really suffers from the fact that it doesn't really have an A plot and a B plot. It has plot 1, which resolves, and then plot 2 starts. Because the entire thing with Wesley is solved halfway through the episode, and then Data's plot takes over. Yeah. And although Wesley's plot is more interesting in general, the build-up to Data's plot, that doesn't end up doing it justice, because they end up only focusing on the moral question of it and not why we should really care about it, as you already mentioned. And I think both plots suffer because of it, in that neither of them really gets the focus that they should have, because, let's face it, the actual solution that we got with Wesley's plot was basically the snap of a finger. He walks in and says, yo, do this, and the guy's like, cool. Yeah. And then that's it. There's no conflict that is anything but internal for Wesley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've said this about 100 episodes, but again, I think this is a one where these could make 2 separate episodes.
Yes,
like,
good
you could
ones,
have it,
too.
Yeah, if you had more time to explore the whole Data arc, I think that could be an interesting episode. And if you had the time to explore the whole Wesley bit, I think that also could be a really interesting episode on its own.
And yet, here we are, doing neither.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been nice to see Wesley actually have some, like, conflict with his team, so then he can, like, learn to overcome it and whatnot. Instead, like, I was so confused because the first time we meet Ensign Davies, he's like, yeah, great, who's on your team? Oh, okay, I wouldn't, like, and then he just tells him, this is what I would have done. I wouldn't have put Mary He writes that he likes to break up married teams, and I just wrote homewrecker. I know that's not what he meant, but I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
And Wes is like, oh, I didn't think of that. And I'm like, that's okay. Some like married people work well together, some don't. Like, it's your first time. And just, and then Davies is like, yeah, and I can take over if you need help. Like that. Yeah. I expect him to be like, you know, if you need help, let me know. I'm happy to like give you an extra hand. But he's like, no, I'll take over. And so I was like, okay, I thought there was going to be more conflict there. Yeah. And then later when they do the like 6 to 8 weeks later, who knows? And Wes is like, oh, I think we should do that like scan thing. And Davies is like, no, that'll like take a while. And like, yeah, we like detected a little bit of this stuff, but like, meh. And Wes is like, oh, okay. And then he goes to talk to Riker and then comes back and he's like, do the scan. And Davies is like, okay.
Yep, whatever.
Like
it's
that,
fine. Sounds good to me.
It didn't make sense.
Yeah, it was a very, like, hack way to do it. But I think what they were going for is, like, he listened to Wesley because he said it with authority. Like, Wesley didn't seem, like, wishy-washy about it.
I mean, that if there were just talking about like tone of voice, that is honestly not, that's a weird message. You could say anything in like a, you know, firm voice, and what people are just supposed to do that. Yeah. Like if I went up to Davies and is like, Davies, burn your shoes in front of me.
Yeah.
Well, he's not going to, like, that's a weird thing to do.
Yeah.
So like for that message to be like, you know, if you say something with conviction, then you're a leader. Cool. I've said a lot of things with conviction that are pretty stupid.
Yeah,
so.
I think the issue is Jeff. The issue is Jeff. The issue is definitely more about how they're choosing to tell the story, and like we obviously can't speak towards the intention behind like what they meant with how Davies was doing things, but the fact is that they really just focused on his internal problem, and although they built up Davies to be a problem, he clearly wasn't in the end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe they're trying to go with that, oh, well, it was all in Wesley's head, and he just had to learn confidence, or maybe they were going with all of Wesley's problems are his own problems and not anyone else's, which I don't know if I agree with that approach.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you do have to deal with difficult people.
Yeah. And I think everyone on the team seemed like not resentful. Like they seemed to understand that they're basically like here to help a kid with a school assignment.
Yeah.
Basically, instead of being like, oh, why the fuck does this random ass kid get such an important assignment when like I've been through the academy, I've been serving, and I'm like actually in the hierarchy, you know?
Well, you know, not everybody can have their education being controlled by Riker, so
That's a good point.
Yeah. I wish there was a little bit more conflict there. Like it didn't have to be extreme, but I wish there was someone who was uncomfortable with taking orders from a child.
Like if they had someone who was like a bit older, like older than the people there.
Yeah, like someone middle-aged or something.
Yeah, just some kind of like, and not like, there should have been logically a little bit of pushback, because even if you're being professional, there's still like ego gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
So like there still would be some tension if you're having like a child tell you what to do.
I think this exact problem has actually been dealt with in Star Trek both before this episode and since this episode, because like I'm thinking immediately of that moment when Geordi was in command of the bridge, and he had that one douche nozzle
Logan.
who was constantly questioning him, and in the end it was about Geordi having to stick to his guns and keep the fact that he was in command, therefore his decision is what goes, and it ends up being a part of who he is going forward. Now, given his character's a little inconsistent between then and now, but if you want to take that as a growth moment, it is absolutely something that you see from his character in the rest of the series, where now he's always confident in his decisions.
Yeah, you could argue that like sort of prepared him to be chief engineer.
Exactly.
Because now he's in a position of authority. You know?
And as I mentioned, there's other episodes that deal with this better following as well.
Yeah, I can think of a specific example from a later season.
Yeah, I think I might be thinking of the same one.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking, B1?
I think I am Maggie 2. What? Oh, no, does that make me Maggie 1?
Yes.
Oh. Well,
If I'm
I guess we're
Maggie 2,
changing my
then-
name. Next episode will be Maggie, and Dory.
Yes.
You're going to have trouble telling us apart.
And we'll wear our striped pajamas.
Damn it.
Oh, bananas in pajamas.
Yeah.
Bananas in pajamas. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Can you get copyright strike from singing that song?
I
don't know.
certainly hope not.
Yeah, because B1 and B2 is Banana 1 and Banana 2.
Oh, yeah.
Aren't those the most creative names?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also thinking about, like, you know, Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah.
That exchange. I don't think they say, like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Or,
I think
don't know.
he-
Try and take over the world.
Yeah,
Something like that.
I think Brain does say that. It's like, are you thinking what I'm thinking, Pinky? And then Pinky says some weird shit. And
It's,
he's like,
are you pondering what I'm pondering?
oh, yeah, that's what it is.
Oh.
You pondering what I'm pondering?
Oh my god.
Can we talk for a moment about Star Trek science and the fact that they fired torpedoes at a planet and fixed volcanoes in like 2 seconds?
Yeah. That's dumb.
Science!
Yeah, a lot of the science stuff completely loses me. I was like, do I write down? I almost wrote down like half of the exchanges of them just explaining what the problem was.
Never do that.
Of
Never.
like the dilithium. And then I was like,
No.
I can't keep track. I don't. So I think I just wrote like, there's dilithium lattices.
So, Dory, here's the thing.
It's like, that seems about it.
Science in Star Trek makes sense from a certain point of view. It just doesn't make sense from an actual scientific point of view most of the time, because in the end,
Yeah.
it is science fiction. So, A, it has to be simplified to an extent, and B, they're going to have to make things up every now and then, because it takes place in a future with a lot of science that we don't understand yet. So, there are assumptions based on kind of like the logic of what certain words mean within the Star Trek universe, and sometimes they fit, sometimes they're inconsistent. That's just kind of how it goes with Star Trek, and you do get kind of used to the jargon over time. There's definitely less of it in TNG than in something like Voyager, where they've really hammed it up, but every now and then you're gonna get jargon episodes and you're gonna have to deal with it, and I apologize. Don't write it down. Don't, like, take notes on all the jargon. If it's getting confusing for you, don't worry about it. We can kind of explain what they mean about it for you, but the point was to sound sciencey and have it make sense within the universe, and sometimes that succeeds with the audience, sometimes it really doesn't.
Yeah. I think the basic shit is that, like, the crystals inside the planet are growing weird. Like, they're in an unusual pattern. And that's
Yeah, they said lattice shape.
yeah, and that's causing the crystals to vibrate, and that's what's shaking the planet to destroy itself, basically.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Those are some big crystals.
Yeah. Do you know what a resonance frequency is?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So everything has a resonance frequency.
I don't.
So
Continue.
I'm not sure how quite to explain this.
Is this like the singing stone?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, well, it definitely covers that.
Yeah, it does. But okay, you know how sometimes they show a sound frequency, like a high pitched sound, and it shatters glass?
Oh my gosh. Is this like, okay. There was an episode of Magic School Bus back in the day. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the show, but it was like
Yeah.
a huge part of my childhood. And there's an episode that's all about like sound, and they
Yeah.
go to a haunted house, and everything they touch, you see like the sound waves, but every single instrument, everything is different. Is that sort of what?
It's related to that, yeah. So sound is actually a physical thing. It's air pressure, right? So that's why you have the waves. It's basically like all the air gets kind of compressed and is pushed at a certain frequency, right? That's why if you look at speakers up close, they're vibrating in and out. That's how
yes.
that's how they create the sound. They're moving the air. So every object has that sort of air pressure that like it responds to, right? So glass, if you get a certain frequency, like a certain amount of that air pressure, that vibration, it will cause the whole pane of glass to vibrate, and it'll shake so much eventually that it'll just put too much pressure on the glass and it'll crack and like break, basically. Mm-hmm. That's why there's that trope in TV of if there's like a high pitched sound like that, like windows will shatter and stuff like that. You know, you get the same thing if like something's just really loud because that's just a lot of air pressure. So basically there's something in the planet that's resonating with the crystals, which is causing them to vibrate violently. Yeah. So theoretically, you could, if you found the resonance frequency of like your desk, you could technically like just vibrate and destroy your desk.
That, how would you like put that back? Like how could you like vibrate back at your stuff?
Well, you'd need something that's generating sound in the same way.
And how do you find like how do you figure out what things vibrating frequency is to like decide to shatter it?
Well, that's where science fiction comes in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So because
it's usually just kind of like trial and error in real life. Like if you're trying to find like what's gonna shatter this glass. A glass is like the easiest to do this with, which is why that's usually what they do it on. You just kind of play frequencies until you see the glass shaking, until you see it vibrating.
And like what can these frequencies? Could they be like anything? You just play like different songs, or it
No.
It has to be a
tones.
certain kind of.
Yeah. A song
okay.
is like millions and millions of frequencies all together to create a specific kind of sound that you enjoy. But a frequency is just a single note.
Yeah.
So you just get like a really powerful piano and just one by one each key to see what happens.
Even pianos fluctuate between frequencies. Most things do. Most things that generate sound do.
So, Dory, do you remember in sound class when you were preparing your mixer or whatever, you had to play that tone, that really like annoying tone? Yeah, that tone is a single frequency. So that's the kind of things you would play, is just like single tones like that.
Huh.
Yeah.
So is there like okay, just humor me for this. Mm-hmm. So like in say like there's like a tone library. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that they would just like set it up and just bring things near it to see like what it does to stuff? Like one by one. Is this completely stupid?
I'm sure someone's done it. I imagine so.
Like I'm stuck on the idea of like blowing up a desk with sound. So like just like putting down like speakers and just
you could
trying different tones just to see what frequency just blows.
For a desk, you'd probably need a very low frequency and a very powerful low frequency.
Why low?
Because you'd probably need like the I don't know, Jeff, do you think you need a low or a high frequency to vibrate a desk?
I honestly don't know much about the direction that you've gone with this, to be honest. I understand that something like glass is shatterable because glass is something that we can like measure vibration in. But wood is something that absorbs a lot of sound and it absorbs things much better than glass does, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. It is still theoretically possible.
Okay, but sound in the end is like it's a type of energy, and it's a force, and this force, when it's going up against something that can absorb it, I assume you need to go lower and lower and lower in order to create waves that are large enough.
Yeah, because then you get those heavy, like, hits.
The long waves rather than short waves. Because the higher you go, the shorter the waveform is.
Yeah, and I think... I'm trying to think at what's better at absorbing low frequencies. Because actually the way they sound dampen low frequencies is more of a physical thing. Like they set up a physical design so that the low frequencies bounce around.
Right.
I think that's how it works. Yeah, because I think low frequencies gets through much easier.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, because when you listen to someone through a wall, it's like muffled, so you're losing all the high frequencies to description.
Right.
Yeah, so I think theoretically, if you were tried to like vibrate a table so hard that it like destroys itself, I think you'd have to go low and loud.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is this too much for you, Dory?
No. It's just interesting. I've never thought about any of this. I'll be honest, sound class was not my, let's say, forte in school. But, yeah, I don't think much about frequencies. It doesn't come up in my day-to-day life. So I've never thought about it. So I don't find it overwhelming. I just find it, like, it's interesting. I just have never thought about it. So I didn't have, like, I also didn't think about the fact you could blow up a desk without explosives.
Well, because sound is just vibrations. It's vibrations of the air.
Because, like, when you're I sort of started thinking about, like, you know, with, like, earthquakes, but that's not sound, though.
It's kind of related. Like, it's not sound, but it,
because, like, aftershocks can, like, but that's also not sound. That's just the earth being a dick.
Some of the principles are similar because of how sound works. It's like waves and vibrations, and that's what earthquakes are. So earthquakes aren't sound, but some of the principles are related in terms of like how vibrations work and stuff. Which is why when you want to soundproof a room, one of the best things is to just have your room full of stuff, because then the sound has a lot of things to bounce off of, and that diffuses, every time it bounces off of something, it diffuses the sound, and it's less and less powerful.
I guess that's why foam is good, because it's like,
I
almost said thick and juicy. That's not the right way to describe foam.
Foam is actually good because it's very porous. And therefore, sound gets into it, and it bounces around and diffuses through that.
Yeah. That's why you'll see a lot at, like, concert halls and stuff. Sometimes they'll have, the ceiling will be, like, weirdly geometrical. Like, it'll have a lot of, like, squares and weird angles sticking out and stuff.
Classic ceilings.
Yeah. It's to deaden the sound. It's so that there's no echo.
Thanks, Star Trek, for teaching us science by having us look up half the science because you didn't teach us.
Yeah.
Hey, I've learned more, like, from you guys in this podcast than I think I ever did in any of my years at high school science. And that's not a joke. I actually mean that.
And that's the tooth.
The whole tooth and nothing but the tooth.
I think it's a good time to pivot now.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any favorite moments of this supremely uninteresting episode that could have where potential went to die?
I mean, I don't know if I call favorite, but let's call it notables. Okay, one is the weird ass exchange between Wes, Troy, and Riker in the hallway.
The one where he didn't get an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Riker and Troy are walking down the hall. Riker fully sees Wesley exit the lift, and then like he runs up behind them and goes, "Hi, can I walk with you?" And then Troy goes, "Yes." And then Wes goes, "I need a little advice." And Riker goes, "Well, it's free." And then Wes goes, "Walking or advice?" And then Riker goes, "Both."
Of course it's free. It's the future.
I was like, what was this conversation?
Did you honestly think Riker was referring to the walking Wes?
I mean, clearly he did.
This is
That's just
such
really
a bizarrely written and just everything conversation.
Yeah.
There's one line I did like that did stand out to me. Picard is talking with Troy. She also mentioned she had a Betazoid kitten. What the fuck does that? What does that look like? What is that? What is a Betazoid kitten? What does that look like? How does that work?
I don't know. It's another instance of like, we'll just put a science fiction word in front of a regular thing to make it sound alien.
Troy's mom didn't get along with the cat. Okay.
That was funny.
But like, yeah, so this is Picard's line. He's like getting ready to get on the horse, and he goes, "It seems that some creatures have the capacity to fill spaces you never knew were empty." And I was like, and I took that personally.
Yeah.
Rude.
Yeah.
That is like
just at me next time.
Yeah, that's like, I feel very attacked right now. Like, rude. Other than that, no. Sorry. I liked Picard's glass mug he used. Other than that, no. That's it.
Yeah, I wanted to mention this is the first time that Picard drinks the tea that he orders. Because if you recall, the last time that he ordered tea Earl Grey hot, it was a plant.
Yes. You got a plant. I don't really have a favorite thing from this episode other than just kind of like generally liking the Wesley stuff. Because I'm kind of more invested in his arc now, like rewatching it and like watching it with intent, watching the series with intent. Mm-hmm. Although I did really love the line where Troy says that the cat and my mother reacted badly to each other. But yeah, that's all I got for this episode.
Oh, I just remembered. There's the part where they're in 10 forward and Riker's sitting with the lady, and then Wes comes in and then he whispers to the lady, he goes, "Family emergency." I don't know why I found that funny.
That was cute. I like that Riker seems unbothered by getting cock-blocked by Wesley.
Well, he'll just catch up with that lady later.
Yeah. She didn't seem to mind.
I really liked that that Data was a little cute, and that's it, because he was only a little cute, and he didn't save the rest of that part of the story, so that was very disappointing.
Although, I maintain that Data totally played that girl's transmission on purpose. I think Data wanted to guilt everybody by making them listen to this little girl plead before he like cut off contact.
Okay, I could see that.
I don't know if he genuinely did, but like I choose to believe he did.
I think that the part of the episode that I thought was the most amusing, both because it was supremely obvious from a writing perspective and because it like tried to further the plot along, is that moment when they're discussing the Prime Directive and Picard orders Data to go cut the transmission, and he's like, all right, cool. So he walks right over to the computer right behind Picard and turns on the little girl pleading for help. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, did you need to do that to turn off a conversation? Or did the script just call for this so that now everyone can feel guilty?
That's exactly what I was talking about. I'm like, I think Data did that on purpose.
Well, that's a thing I just said.
I kind of wonder what if, like, I mean, I think that it's valid and that makes sense. I was just like, I kind of took it as like maybe a coincidence. He turned it on to like turn it off, and she just happened to be speaking.
But like, he shouldn't have had to do that.
But
I
mean,
think that's
either way worse for me. Like I don't like. I'm happy she got saved, and I am on Data's side. Whichever way, like the intention was, whether he did it on purpose or it just happened to be played. I didn't think about the on purpose when I watched it. I thought it was just a coincidence that she just happened to be like that. But
I think,
now that you guys mention it, I'm like, Data's, because I mean, Picard says you're like inching towards more of humanity. So Data's starting to think like a human, and this is definitely something a human would do.
Like, I think the script intended it as a coincidence, but I choose to believe that Data did it on purpose.
It gives better intention.
Yeah,
I support that.
I like that Sarjenko's walls were made of plywood, very clearly. Badly painted plywood.
Yes. All right, so we should get into predictions for the next episode. Dory, hang on to your butt, because the next episode is called...
Oh my god, I'm doing it.
Q Who.
I don't know if I'm happy or angry. No, okay, no. I'm gonna take this as yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this as yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Q.
I will say something very important happens in this episode. And the line that Jeff came up with to summarize it, I think is very good, and I will read it to you now. Q shows the crew of the Enterprise that there are some things in the universe that they aren't ready to understand.
Oh my god. Oh, okay. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is like, oh, because it's Q. It could be, I'm like, it could be anything. No, I forget this is Star Trek. It's not going to be anything. Oh god. This is either going to be absolutely random batshit, like out of nowhere, or it's going to be incredibly predictable. There's like no in between.
Okay, I will tell you that because I'm hoping that this improves the episode watching experience. There will be consequences stemming from this episode. Yes. Lots of them.
Ooh.
You might have to wait a while, but they will be significant.
Okay. What could there be that they haven't encountered yet? No, that's way too dumb. No, I can't. No. Okay, I thought dinosaurs, but I'm like, no way. There's no way they see dinosaurs.
No, there is a dinosaur episode in Voyager.
Because the second I said dinosaurs, I'm like, they've got people lizards. I don't think that's gonna like throw anybody off at this point. Oh,
I mean, Kirk already fought a lizard man.
True.
Is there a way to like? No, I always forget. This isn't like I'm trying to guess what happens.
Yeah.
I have to just predict. I forget this is not like a game.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay, I'm really trying to think of something that they maybe haven't touched on before. I'm just thinking of like stupid things now. I'm like zombies. No, this is okay. It's like vampires. I mean, they've got aliens. I mean, I say aliens in quotes, but I can't imagine they would have like vampires and ghosts and shit on this and like zombies. That just,
I mean,
that
why
seems
not?
like a lot even for Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. They did have salt vampires in the first series, in the original
Okay,
series.
wait. They had salt vampire.
Yeah.
Just
What
one.
does that mean? What's a salt vampire?
It feeds on salt.
It was a monster that like steals the salt from your body.
Ew.
Yeah.
What?
It doesn't
Ew.
look great either.
Ew. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Do they look like a vampire?
No.
No, I just thought of another idea, but that's stupid. That doesn't matter. That doesn't make sense. Oh God, this is so hard. There's too many options.
By the way, I sent a picture of the salt vampire into our group chat on Telegram.
No, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. That is the worst. I closed it, but I can still see it in my head. No, okay. No, I hate that. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Oh God. That might be like the worst creature I've seen Star Trek wise.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate that so much. He doesn't come on this series, does he?
No.
No.
It's a
Okay,
she,
good.
by the way.
Oh, she, sorry.
Sexist.
Well, I just assume, well, men suck, so.
That's a fair point. You're pretty good at it.
Okay, I've got something. It's pretty out there.
Sweet.
Okay, so maybe there is a... Inevitably, when we do our season 2 retrospective, and you talk about this prediction, it's gonna be real stupid.
That's okay. We like stupid on this
So-
program.
Perhaps somewhere out in the galaxy, there's like a space where, I guess like a plane of time, where maybe there's like purgatory. And like maybe like God. Like loved ones are like or maybe not love one. It's just people are like stuck in between in this like purgatory that's out there, but
this sounds
it's not something they thought about, but now like it's there, and it could be a literal place. And
this sounds very similar to the episode with the Traveler, where they go into the weird space and start imagining stuff that they want.
Oh yeah. Oh no, so do I have to come up with something else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I'll just stick. Q shows them purgatory. That's what I'm going with.
Cool. Great.
I'm not
I love
expanding.
the build up to that.
Yeah.
I'm not expanding. He just shows them purgatory.
Awesome.
I would watch the fuck out of that. I
Yeah,
hope that's what's
I
coming
would.
up.
Maybe we'd answer the question of what God needs with a starship. That's a line from one of the
Goddamn.
movies, by the way.
God.
A real bad movie.
All right, so if you would like to find out if Dory's correct, watch along with us and join us next time for the next episode of Fully Functional, a TNG podcast.
Goodbye. Sorry.
Please keep that one in.
Yes.
Please.
Okay.
Bye,
hold on,
folks.
okay.
Let me know how it turns out.
Okay, hold on.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Goodbye.